In this video, let us do a demo on the query selector methods that we had discussed in the previous video. So in the previous video, we learned about get element by ID, query selector that are used to select a single element on the DOM. Then we discussed about elements that can select methods that can select multiple elements, like get elements by tag name, query selector all. So in this video, let us do a demo for all those methods that we had discussed in the previous video. So what I will do is I will create an HTML file, and this I've already created this structure for you. So I'm using emit. So you write exclamation tag and then press enter, then press tab, and then you get the structure of HTML. I'm using the live server extension, so you can go to your extensions tab and write live server. So this live server, you can install it and then open your file with the live server. So go here, open with live server. So let us start. So what I will do is I will first create a header tag, and in the header tag I will create a h1. So h1, and I will write inside the document object model. So inside the document object model, so for my title node, let us use a good title, document object model. Now this is our header tag within which our h1 tag is nested. Now let me create a main tag, and inside the main tag I will create a h2 tag, and I will say love JavaScript. Now as a sibling to the h2 element, I will create a new h3 tag, and I will give it an ID of Christmas wish. So I'm using emit here, okay? Hash represents your ID, and then you press tab. So you get this element h3 ID, and I will say Merry Christmas. So you can say belated Merry Christmas. Now then I will define a p tag adjacent to our h3 and h2 elements. P is what the JavaScript actually looks like, or you can write some lorem ipsum, doesn't matter. And then after this I will define an input tag. So we'll also see how we can read the text for our input elements. So input tag type is email, and then I will define a name tag. So I will be selecting this input tag using the attribute selector. So we will be using name, the name attribute, and then basically fetch that element from the HTML that we render. So type is email, name is email, and then we define a placeholder. Enter your email. Okay, now let us define an unordered list as well. So what I will do is I will say ul, and within which I want 4 li's. So ul li, and then I will say 4, and then press tab. So you get a list of 4 elements. So list items. So I will say task 1, then I will here say task 2, task 3, and task 4. Now what I will do is I will give a class to task 2 and task 3. Class task 2, and let us give the class to task 4 instead of task 3. So I'll say task 4. Okay, and so this is our all in HTML that I wanted to write. Now let us see what this looks inside the browser. So let me reload the page. Okay, so this is what our HTML looks like in the browser. Now what I will do is we'll learn about how we can select elements in DOM. So I'll be using the console. So I'm back in my console. All those query elements are now available on the global document object. So let us select the Christmas wish heading, which is a h3 element here, and let us start by selecting it with the ID. So what I will do is I will first clear my console, and I will create a constant called as Christmas wish, and I will say document. For selecting element by the ID, get element by ID. Since we know we have an ID of Christmas wish on our belated Merry Christmas text, I can say hash, and I will use the ID Christmas wish. Okay, so let us see what is inside the Christmas wish. So you are getting null. So what is the problem here? So are we using the correct name? Let me check this. So up above we are using the ID of Christmas -wish. Okay, so Christmas -wish. Okay, so we do not have to use the hashtag. So my mistake, guys. This. Okay, so let me clear the console first. I will use the same const and press enter. So let me reload this because it won't detect otherwise. Okay, and I will say Christmas wish. Okay, so we are getting the element h3 with an ID of Christmas wish. So you can see it is highlighting the element to the left of the screen. Okay, so we are able to fetch the element, select the element from your rendered HTML. Now if you hover over the log, you can see it seems to work as expected. To basically get the feeling of what is there inside this selected element, I've already logged this to the console, and you can see it is highlighting the Christmas wish, the element that is having the ID of Christmas wish. So if you want to learn more about the console methods, I do have a video on console methods every JavaScript developer should know. The link for that can be found down below this video. Now if I try to inspect the log, we can see that it is an object. Okay, so the log that we got. Okay, so let me log this. Console.log Christmas wish, or let me say console.dir. So this will give us the object. Okay, and if I open this, move down, so you can see we are getting the structure for this Christmas wish element, and this is a DOM object. Okay, not a normal object. So we can see it is an object that browser automatically creates and exposes to us in JavaScript for this h3 element. Now such objects are created for all such HTML rendered elements. Such object will be created for each element. This love JavaScript also. Belated Merry Christmas inside the document object model. For each and every element, such kind of object, the DOM object, will be created by the browser. So for all the tags that you could have there, you will get such kind of objects. You can see lots of information regarding the element. You can see it also show what are the children that this element has. So let us move down. Okay, so it shows what are the children that this element has, the parent node of this element, the parent element. So we know that the h3 element, this one, this is nested within the main tag. So parent node for this is main, the parent element for this is also main. So it gives us the entire relationship that this element has with other elements. Okay, so what is the position with respect to the client? Like it also shows us client top, the position of this element from the top of the client screen, from the left of the client screen, from the width of the client screen, and the client height. So these are dynamic parameters that basically vary based on the position at which your element is basically on your rendered screen. So you can also manipulate most of these properties, which we will see a bit later. Now one thing that you need to understand is on the element that we got, we can itself apply the selector methods, for example query selector and query selector all. So let us play with more methods. For example, on the document, we can use the get elements by class name here. So what I will do is, back in my console, I will clear the console and I will say const. I will select all the tasks. So I will say document dot get elements by class name. Okay, and I will use the class task. Let us see the tasks, log the task to the console. So what this is actually giving us is an HTML collection that I discussed in the previous video. So get elements by class name will give us a array-like collection, but it's a specific HTML collection object, which in the end looks like an array. The one thing that you need to understand is that everything you can do with arrays need not be possible with HTML collections, though you can use a for loop like so. So let me show you this. What I will do is I will write a for loop for let task of tasks, and I will console log the task to the console. So this runs, we are getting all our elements that are within our HTML collection getting rendered on the console. Now the most modern methods, the query selector and query selector all, also does the very same thing, but the older methods that we discussed, they're kind of deprecated, though they work fine as well. The get element by ID is still a prominent one, to select an element directly by using the ID, which serves as a direct reference to the element. Now to return the first matching item, we can use the query selector. So I want to get the first matching item, we can use the query selector. I want to get task 2. So what I will do is document dot get element. Let me see the structure. Okay, so coming back to our tasks, this has a class of task, this has a class of task. If I use the query selector all methods, then I will get a node list which will have these two elements. Okay, so we are not interested in selecting multiple elements. I only want the first match element. For that I will use query selector and I will pass the task class. So we are definitely going to get only a single element, the first match element. So coming back to the console, I will write query selector, pass the dot is used to signify class, and write the name of the class, and this, let us log the task to the console. So if you want all the matching elements, you use the method query selector all and then specify the CSS selector. So what I will do is I will say const tasks. So I want all the elements that have a class of task. So I will say query selector, but I will use all, and I will say dot task. Okay, so identify task has already been used, so let me give it some other name. So tasks, one more essay, and I can say document dot query selector all dot task and tasks. So we are getting a node list in this case. So query selector all, as I discussed in the previous video, it gives us a node list instead of an HTML collection. So we are getting a node list. Now this instead is giving us a node list, as I told you, which is unlike the get elements by class name, which gave us a HTML collection. Okay, so we were getting HTML collection for your get elements by class name, but in this case, in case of the query selector all, we are getting a node list. So you can work with the node list just like an array that gives you all the items that you found for this selector. So let me try a bit more complex query selections. So first I will clear the console, and what I will do is I will select the first and the last list item. So I will say first list item document dot query selector, and what I will say is ul li, and I'm interested in first of the type li, and let me log the first list item to the console. So we were interested only in the first list item, so for that I use the selector li colon first hyphen of hyphen type, and this way we got the first item in our unordered list. So let me select the last list item, and I will say document dot query selector ul li last of type, and I will log the last list item to the console. So we are getting the last list item that is present within our list of tasks, So now this is the power that query selectors provide you, and you want to do that to add event listeners, or you can manipulate these elements on the fly. So now lastly, let us now target the input field using the name attribute that I told you. So we will use the attribute selector here to target, say, a specific input. Here we have only one unique input. Assume that we had more inputs, we need to take care for specificity. In that case, in order to target the right element, what I will do is, since I want only the first input element, even if in the case we had more input elements, we are only interested in fetching the very first input element. But in this case, we have only one single input element, so we will get that only. I will say const input field document dot query selector, and here we will use the attribute selectors. So what I will do is I will write input and then I will say name. We are interested in the input elements which has a name attribute of email, and let us log the input field to the console. So we got our input element, and it is directly referencing the input tag, the input element. So this is all about I wanted to cover pertaining to selecting the elements in the DOM. So in the next video we will learn about properties of DOM. So if you are loving the content, do not forget to subscribe the channel and do share it with your friends and colleagues. This would give me fuel to bring out more quality stuff for you guys. Thanks a lot, guys.